What's up? Welcome to another episode of Wassup Conversations. I'm your host Nainita Desai, and today I have an award-winning composer with a long and outstanding list of projects. To mention some of her works, I can name the Oscar-nominated Cannes-winning feature documentary for Sama, the Sundance-winning feature The Reason I Jump, and last year acclaimed interactive film game Immortality. Her new project is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Season 3, and with her distinctive approach, she's brought a new soul to this already amazing game. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nainita Desai. In this episode, we talk about the interesting way Nainita got the Call of Duty project, her background, the way she sound designs, and her important work of composing for eye-opening documentaries. Before we begin, please make sure to subscribe to Wassup Conversations if you're enjoying the show. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is available right now on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC platforms. Thank you very much. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Wassup Conversations, Nainita. This is such a huge honor to have you on the podcast. Your work is not just inspiring, but it's very important and influential on how we get to know the world we're living in. And I'm seriously thankful for your heart and art, making music and emotions for important subjects that we should pay more attention to in our daily lives. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Hamid Reza, for having me on your show.
Yeah. So congratulations on the release of Season 3 of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I'm a huge fan of the franchise, and I'm aware of the importance of music in this series and the big names that have been attached to it so far. So Season 3 sounds amazing. It's very different. It carries a captivating yet emotional atmosphere while being so energetic. It has a unique sound to it, and considering that you have instruments never used in the franchise before, such as Haldrophon and Koval flute, I guess, and they sound so different from the previous games. So yeah, so let's talk about Modern Warfare. How did this project happen?
I got a call out of the blue, which took me by surprise via my agents, and I met with the team on Zoom. I'm based in London, UK. So I met with the team and we threw some ideas around, talked about how we could make this score distinctive and take it one step further from the music on the franchise. And that was it. You know, we went for it. So it was normally I go through a torturous process of waiting for months to find out if I've got it. In fact, I did have to wait a while before I found out that I had the game, but I was amazed and gobsmacked that I got it, because Call of Duty's been on my radar for years as this iconic video game franchise. So to be invited to join the family of amazing composers that have worked on it in the past was really, really exciting. And I just had such a joyful time working on it. Just the most amazing professional team. They gave me a lot of creative freedom within the parameters and the brief that we discussed. You know, I could sort of move around and make it my own thing. So yeah, it was a joy to work on.
And what a genius way of inviting another composer like you, perfect for Modern Warfare 2. So what was the project that kind of like inspired them to call you for this one?
I think.
Did they ever talk about it?
Yeah, because I thought, why me? You know, I mean, I didn't think it was. I mean, I'd love to have written for it, and I'm very honored and flattered. But I asked them, and they. I think someone on the team. I think someone on the team's wife had been watching Netflix. And she watched a film that I scored last year called 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible. Yeah. And they watched the film and they said, wow, this music is cool. Who did the music for it? And then her husband or partner heard it and thought, yeah, this could be really cool for Call of Duty. So that's how I got invited to have a conversation with the team and the music team there. So that's how it came about.
Wow, that's great. So were you a gamer before?
I must confess, no.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do have a little bit of a back history with games, because when I first started, I mean, I have a background in my away from music. I started off as a sound designer and on feature films and working in music engineering. So after my stint of doing that for a while, I then tried to get into composing for TV and film. And the first opportunity I had was to do sound effects and music for video games, many, many years ago when I was growing up. So I did that for a couple of years. I worked for some developers, creating sound effects and music for Pro Pinball, World Cup Monopoly, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Sheep for PlayStation 1. And then, so I really enjoyed, and I used to play games as a teenager. And I remember the first game I think I ever played was when I was 5 years old. My best friend had an Atari console, and I'd go to her house to play Space Invaders.
Wow.
and then I sort of moved away from all of that, and then I got into, after a couple of years of working in games, it was about 20 years ago, I then got work offered a project in TV, and so my career took a left turn, and I got into film and TV scoring, and then I got back into video games. About 5 years ago, and so I'm very much in all genres, but really storytelling and characters, and that's what, doesn't matter what the project is, but that's what drives and motivates me when I'm composing.
Yeah, exactly. For example, Modern Warfare has two important characters in season 3, and how did you approach making new themes for them, and generally the whole sound field of Modern Warfare season 3?
Yeah. So what I was given was the setting is Mexico.
Yeah.
And we have two main characters for my game, Alejandro and Valeria. Alejandro works for the Mexican Special Forces, and Valeria is the leader of this powerful international terrorist trafficking organization. And so we wanted to give them a distinctive feel for both of them sonically. And I was also inspired by the location of Mexico. So I thought, well, maybe we're not going to have a mariachi band playing on this because it won't be suitable, because the instruments are a bit too light. But authenticity is really important to me. So I thought, well, we're creating a very dark, gritty, edgy type of score here, and the team, the music team, the sound team at Call of Duty, they wanted to push things further from the previous main game score, what they'd done before, and have more emotion in it, and have acoustic and organic instruments. So I found these. I'd been on this instrument called the haldurophone, was really got on my radar, and I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to use that. And I found these two guys who live in Greece. They'd contacted me actually they were looking for, to contribute to some projects of mine, and I thought this would be perfect for it, because the haldurophone is Alejandro's sound, and the instrument is this hybrid acoustic, electroacoustic bowed stringed instrument. It's a bit like a cello. It looks a little bit like a cello, but it's got these sympathetic drone strings that all feed back. Each string has its own pickup, like an electric guitar has a pickup. They've got loads of pickups for all the strings on this instrument, which makes it really difficult to control the sound, which was perfect for this, because we thought we'd introduce a bit of chaos, and it sounds like it's got this dark Moorish quality to it, which is very Spanish. I thought, it's quite mournful and soulful. And that kind of Spanish sound is connected to the Mexican connection as well. So, and it's a very, very rare instrument. There are very few of them, maybe 6 or 7 of them in the world, made by this guy who was living in Iceland, but he now lives in Greece. So, so I brought these 2 guys to play the haldrophone on that, and it's just the fantastic sound to it. And then with Valeria, I know this flautist who lives in Switzerland, Sandro Friedrich, and he plays world flutes. And he'd been on my radar for a while as well, and I just brought him in. And he actually plays the Fuller flute. The Caval flute was what interested me about his playing. And then when we actually played the Caval, it didn't quite work. And so he has like 800 flutes in his home, in his collection. And so we tried different sounds, and the Fuller flute, which is from West Africa, provided the right tone for what I was looking for. It's very I was very interested in a gritty, slightly distorted way of playing to match the electronics and the heavy grooves and the beats and the electronic synths that I was looking for this foundation, and it seemed to match really well with it.
As you mentioned, it brought more emotions to these characters, and considering that this is just a multiplayer section of the game, so you've had experience with non-linear games such as Immortality. How different Modern Warfare 2 is to the other projects, considering that it's a multiplayer online game?
Sorry, how different is Immortality?
I don't know. How different is Modern Warfare 2 compared to the other games that you've scored?
Yeah, well, very different. In many ways, it's quite more conventional. Call of Duty, I've had to take on the legacy of the previous scores and fit into that world, into that sonic world, but then inject my own creative identity to it and give it a bit more my own personality in terms of the emotional side with the raw acoustic and organic elements. But with Immortality, it's a very, just going back a second, Call of Duty, we had very strict requirements in certain number of minutes of music and the structure of the pieces and, working, but it's still character driven. I wrote action suites, tension suites, mood suites, emotional moods, and the faction suites for Valeria and Alejandro, the characters. But with Immortality, that was a very, very different process. It was quite experimental, and we had no idea how we would formulate the concept of the music for the game. So we were making things up as we went along in the early stages. Immortality is full motion video. I never worked with images at all. I didn't work with any gameplay because Sam Barlow wanted all the music written first. That helped him. Even though I was working to a script, I had long conversations with Sam. He's a real cinephile. We'd talk about cinema and film and music and composers and film directors that influenced him and me as well. And Immortality is based on three movies. This character, Marissa Marcel, was a film star. She made 3 movies. None of the movies were ever released. So as the gamer, you're immersed in this very complex, multi-layered narrative storytelling. And so it's about 3 films. So the way we devised it was that we had a theme for each of the films in the game, each of the 3 films. And they're period movies, they're genre films. One film made in the 60s, another one in the 70s, 80s, and another one in the 90s. So one direction that we could have gone in was to pay homage to the music in those original movie genres. And then we abandoned that and thought that's not going to work, because as a player, you can be watching clips from any of those movies at any time. So Sam is very philosophical and cerebral in his storytelling and in the concept of the game. So each film is connected. We decided to write 3 musical themes, each theme connected to the film, and each theme represents a different kind of magic in the game. And then along with each theme, musical theme, we had a subverted theme, which contains emotionally the opposite of the main theme's content. It's like kind of a twisted sadness that you hear in the subverted theme. And then we had a supernatural theme, which is connected to the main theme, but they're both, the supernatural theme and the main theme are playing at the same time in parallel, but you only get to hear one theme at any one time.
Yeah.
And when, as the player, you tap into something and you dig into something, because of the way the scenes are tagged, the metadata is tagged, you then start hearing the supernatural theme, which is like a really twisted, mangled, weird, slowed down version of the main theme. And that hopefully really has an impact in terms of the horror aspect of the game. And you go, oh wow, I've tapped into something here. And sometimes I'd scare myself late at night when I was composing the music. And it's quite an orchestral score, but it's very, like we have the 3 themes of religion and art and living in the moment. And they were very like, religion is connected to the 1968 film Ambrosia, based on this cult Gothic novel. And it's has religious connections. So it's about dealing with something pure and abstract that lives beyond our physical existence. It's quite spiritual and dealing with the divine. So, and there's about the spiritual power of the characters. So we thought, how can we convey that in the music? And the instant thought is connection is using the choir for religion. But we thought, no, we always want to push away from convention. We never go down the cliched stereotypical route. With Sam, he always wants to experiment and push things to the edge. So I use the choir, but hopefully in a subverted way, in a slightly different way than you'd normally hear it. And I use the saxophone in the New York City set thriller Minsky. That's the theme called Life. I use the saxophone, and I love the sax. Those sort of 80s noir movies, like Body Double and Basic Instinct, with Sharon Stone. We were both very influenced by those movies. So listening to the Jerry Goldsmith scores, that had a sort of an impact on me when I was growing up. And so it was a kind of a slight homage to that style of composing and writing. There's a film with Sharon Stone and Sylvester Stallone called The Specialist. The score was written by John Barry, and I remember those scores growing up. The music for Body Double, the Brian De Palma's movies. So I'm as much influenced by film and the look and the cinematography than I am with the music as well, with those original film scores. So it's all intertwined for me with visual inspiration and those old film scores and Sam's writing. I was presented with a 400-page script and to work from, and there was a lot of research and soaking up the vibes. And I spent about 2 years working on those themes, going back and forth and tweaking and refining. So it was quite a journey working on them. And then Sam would play the music to the actors. So that influences the performances. The music would influence his writing of the story and vice versa. So it was all a very symbiotic kind of journey, that creative collaboration that we went on, which was really, really different to, the way that I might normally work with traditional film scores.
Yeah, you did great with that. And you've mentioned about the past, the music that were kind of like influential in your style of music or the way you look at film music. So let's go back. Let's go back and talk about your childhood, growing up with music, first gigs. How did you get them? Share with us your success story.
Well, I started off um, learning the piano and the violin at school. And as I was about 10 years old, I wanted to be a famous singer. I wanted to be like my idol, Barbara Streisand. And I had my own pop bands at school. I
Ah,
taught myself to play the guitar. So I was just totally immersed in music. And then as a teenager, I discovered the world of synthesizers.
wow.
I was really into Vangelis and Jean-Michel Jarre, and um, and I was very much into technology as well, sort of recording. I had built up my own little home recording studio, and then I discovered when I was a teenager, I kind of discovered film scores. I went to my local library, and they had a music department, and so I'd borrow all on vinyl albums, original film scores, and bring them home and listen to them. And I discovered Ennio Morricone and John Barry and John Williams and these sort of amazing scores. Dave Grusin, Thomas Newman, they were a huge influence on me, as well as singer songwriters. And then I got a um, I actually did a degree in mathematics, and I did a thesis on the wave equation,
Wow.
and about the fundamentals of sound and synthesis, because I was into synthesizers. So it was all sort of embroiled in one thing, and I discovered film as well. I loved film, so I got a scholarship to go to the National Film and Television School to study sound for film. I didn't actually go into music straight away because I didn't know or realize that being a composer was something that you could make a living out of, that it was a proper profession. So I skirted around the idea of, well, I want to work. I love sort of visuals and storytelling and music. So I got into being a sound designer for feature films after going to film school, and worked on films for Bernardo Bertolucci and Werner
Ah,
Herzog, and these
wow.
sort of amazing European
What a
auteur.
beginning.
Yeah, and I did that for a couple of years, and I learned so much about the sonic landscape of sound in storytelling, not just music, but sound effects and sound design and dialogue and foley's and so on. So and of course music and how it all helps form a story, as well as the script and the acting and the editing and the visual side as well. But I really missed working in music. I really wanted to have a career in music, so I gave that up and I became an engineer, music engineer, working for Peter Gabriel as his assistant music engineer. And that, working in recording studios, working with bands and artists, and just the most amazing, inspiring people, top engineers and producers at Real World Studios in the UK. It's one of the best studios in the world, and that taught me a lot about how to work with musicians and musical creatives, engineering and producing. So I did that for a little while, and then I met a music supervisor who gave me a break. Who was looking for a composer for a show for Channel 4 in the UK. It was a travel adventure show. And because of my experience of working with world music, my experience was not really classical or orchestral. I grew up with every other form of music, like, pop music and film music and jazz and world and ethnic and, world music. Those were my foundations, as well as sound design and working with manipulating sounds and working with synthesizers. That was my real foundation in music. So I got this project that I was thrown in at the deep end, writing the music for this TV show. And one thing led to another, and I ended up writing music for documentaries and factual shows, and now dramas and drama series and feature documentaries, and back in video games. So that's 20 years later. Here we are, having worked on so many different musical genres, and I love working with orchestras as well and strings, and so that sort of combining all those aspects of electronics and world music and symphonic writing now has all formed, sort of helped me form what I do now.
Yeah, you mentioned that you started your career in sound design, and it's completely obvious in your work. I've had the same experience. I started as a sound designer for games, and now I'm making music for them too. But I can totally get it that someone like you is very surgical and tasteful about the sound design in their music. Creating sounds to play with in the process of making music is very enjoyable, of course. But tell me about your process. How do you sound design for a piece? Do you do it before writing, or you make it as you go?
Well, when I first started composing, because I was known for my background in sound design, those were the projects that I tended to get offered a lot, where I could merge the two together to form a kind of music design. It's not you're blurring the lines between sound design and music. I guess a good example of the hybrid form of scoring like that is a film that I scored a couple of years ago called The Reason I Jump. For and that was perfect for me. It culminated in my skill set because I had the sound designer of the film would give me sounds from location that they'd recorded while they were filming, and found all these found sound elements in the film and in the scenes that you see in the film. And I would do musical experiments with them. So I'd start off by the concept of the whole score was to not use any synths, to only work with acoustic, organic sounds or found sounds that were used in the film. So they would give me some found sound from location recordings. And then I'd also record instruments myself. I'd make up my own sort of prepared instruments. Like I brought in a clarinetist who plays prepared clarinet, or circular breathing with saxophones. I brought in all acoustic instruments, violins, cellos. Nothing was artificial, and then I use the human voice a lot as well on that score. So I bring in all these elements, and I will take a little bit of found sound and chop it up. I used Paul Stretch. I used granular synthesis. Um, Loads of plugins for manipulating and chopping up and editing the sounds, and I'd create a sort of like a little grain of sound which then I would loop and stretch into making something not totally unrecognizable, because I still wanted it to be connected to the original sound you see in the film, in the scene. So there's one scene, for example, where in The Reason I Jump, where you see ceiling fans going round and round and table fans going round and round. So we use that the idea of circular motion, and took the sounds of the fans and chopped them up and created loops out of them and layered them on top of one another. So you have these interweaving rhythmical beats all working and interweaving together. And then I use the human voice, where I'd record my own voice and treat it and manipulate it and create rhythms out of syllables and words from the script that you see and hear in the film, and add other acoustic musical elements to it. So everything that you hear in the film musically is connected to the story, and all the like some of the found sounds you hear in a scene, you start off with a sound effect that they've laid in, and then out of that blends, flows a piece of music. It becomes from, like, there's another scene where we hear the raindrops falling. And I took a single raindrop and chopped it up and EQ'd it, filtered it, so it ends up being part of like a hi-hat sound. And it then forms part of the rhythm of a track that I then build into a piece of music. So that was really, really a real blend of the perfect blend of out of the sound effects, you hear pieces of music growing, and we go back into the sound effects sometimes. And it's just a way to be more immersive, get the audience to be more immersed into the sonic landscape of the experience that you're witnessing, And I loved experimenting with vocals as well, because I used to sort of sing as a teenager. I use my voice as an instrument. I don't sing lyrics or songs, but I use it in a way that's much more experimental, and sort of like I chop it up and create sort of new instruments and new sounds out of it. Or sometimes, like I was one cue in The Reason I Jump, where I record my voice and layer it about 53 times, I think. And we mixed it in Dolby Atmos so
Wow.
that you are totally immersed and you're sitting in the cinema listening to the soundtrack. These vocals come and grow and wrap you into this amazing world around you. In a very, it's like I form a choir. The voice becomes like a choir of angels, but it's
Wow.
all created from one voice, which is me singing, and then I sort of layer my own voice 50 times and pitch shift it and change the formants and put delays on it and effects and stuff so that it's like a real choir.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. We spent a lot of time, that sort of process. You can only do that when you're given the luxury of time and to experiment. Whereas in other ways, when I'm working on another game at the moment. Sadly, I can't talk much about it, but that's another experimental process, which is really exciting. It takes me, whatever project I'm working on, I want to be true to the story, true to the characters, whether it's a video game or whether it's film, documentary, or whether it's a feature film, and going on that journey with the filmmaker or the game developer. I'm fortunate that with games I have more time to work, so it's more time to experiment. But then, if I'm working on a drama series, again, I'm using that background in sound design to work with found sounds. Like I did a series for the BBC called Crossfire. The soundtrack's available on Spotify or Apple, and we took sounds from location and I incorporated them into the music score. But then other times, I bring in musicians. For Sama, the film that I scored a few years ago, that it's about the Syrian revolution, about a woman, the relationship between a mother and a daughter growing up in the time of the Syrian revolution and uprising in Aleppo. And I found this violinist. He's a Syrian violinist and he plays the violin, traditional Syrian violin. And I didn't go for a pure classical violin. I wanted this gritty, dirty sound that he created with his playing that mirrored the crumbling city of Aleppo. So, authenticity in terms of finding a unique sound that is true to the story and the setting of the film or the characters, that's really, really important to me.
Yeah. You are the go-to person if someone is making a documentary. Why is that? Is it you who's looking for them, or people just come to you when they want to have a great music for the documentary?
I think I guess my foundations have always been started off in documentary. But I guess people come to me now for those projects, and I've sort of expanded into scoring in other genres as well over the years, of course. But I love writing music for documentaries. I love fiction storytelling, and I'm scoring a fantasy series at the moment, which I can't talk much about, but it's really, really exciting, and other dramas and video games. But I think what it is about documentaries is that I know it sounds very simplistic, but the stories are real. They're real human beings, and so you can connect with it. I can connect with it in a very visceral way. I mean, the fact that it's real means that um, it's not make believe. So I'm part of. I love collaboration. I'm a part of the filmmaking team, and you're working with documentary filmmakers. You're helping change, the potential to change people's lives through film, through awareness, through, real stories, important stories, whereas fiction is different, it's make believe. And that doesn't mean that it's less of an art form. But the power that you have with documentaries to transform and educate and bring stories to the world that you never knew existed, and the power and the ability to make people aware of important issues, whether it be about climate change or wars around the world. I think social issues, personal stories of individuals, remarkable people like Nims Purja in 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible. Bringing his story to the world was really important to me. But it's also entertaining. I think it's, you have to be able to, there's so much scope for creativity with documentary scores now, over the years, that there's creative documentaries. Those are what really interest me. Like The Reason I Jump, the ability to blend genres together. Sometimes I'm working on a film at the moment, which is a documentary, but it also has elements of drama. So mashing up of different film genres and storytelling genres is really interesting, which is why Immortality and Telling Lies was great fun to work on, because we're using non-linear storytelling with, you're actively immersed in pushing the story forward as the gamer, but it's also film. And, that hybrid form of entertainment is, with games and films converging, is the future of entertainment for me. I'm really interested in exploring that space and new ways of telling stories.
Yeah. So exactly. For a few years ago, I composed a documentary, and it was about the water crisis in Nigeria and how it's affecting children in that region. The technical process of making music for it wasn't that different from other projects, but there was this unique feeling of being responsible for an important message here. And it made me more humble and more in service of the movie. So do you also feel that? And what's different making music for an important documentary like, I don't know, for summer?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, it helps me understand what it means to be human,
Yeah.
with those stories, like with Forsama Wad Al Khatib, bringing an important story to the world that's transformative. I mean, growing up as a teenager, music and film was my form of escapism, and it brought. Um, I learned about the world through film, about different cultures and different issues, and so for me, film storytelling through film has been a transformative for my life. Learn working on Forsama changed my life. I mean, not just with my career, but as a human being. I mean, and working on 14 Peaks was, I love um, understanding, other human beings, what makes them tick, what motivates them. And I find it incredibly inspiring to be a part of bringing those stories and messages to the world. I'm very interested in wildlife and animals. I love animals, and so I've always also written music for wildlife films, working for projects, with David Attenborough, the BBC Natural History Unit. That's really important to me as a human being to be a part of those stories, because it's greater than what I do, in terms of music is very important in people's lives. But when it's connected with these kinds of messages and stories, it's so powerful, that it's, as composers, we have this superpower, I believe, in being able to make people feel something emotionally, and to be a part of a documentary, to have that power to make people feel something and move them to do something about their environment or the world around them. That is a very, very fulfilling motivation for me in my as a human being, and not just as a composer.
How beautiful is this that you're working on these important stories, these human stories. And if I'm not mistaken, the meaning of your name is free spirit. Nainita means free spirit, right? Is that true?
Does it? Oh, I don't know. What language? Depends on the language, I guess.
I think in Indian means Indian means free spirit, right?
I think could be. I'm not sure, because my mother named me after this lake in Kashmir in northern India,
Wow.
which is called Nainita. And it's like the goddess of the lake, the eye of the lake, I think. So that was the connection, I think. I have to look that up. But I like that free spirit.
Yeah, I was actually studying that, and I'm kind of sure that that's the meaning of it. I don't know.
Okay. There is a goddess, I think, in Hindu mythology called. I'll have to look it up on. I'll have to Google that now. Interesting one. Thank you for my attention.
So, you're a very active composer. In 2022, you had 16 different projects done within a year. Is that correct? And if yes, how can I find the devil you made a deal with?
In what way? How did I? Certain projects come to me, and I find it very difficult to say no.
But you must sleep.
They're also interesting, and and
how much are you in this studio?
I work about 6 days a week in the studio. Sometimes 7 if I have to. But yeah, I mean, I do take time out. I love to travel, and so I like to be able to take my laptop where I'm traveling. I go to film festivals, and I travel around internationally and locally, and wherever I get opportunities, I'll always try and get out of the studio. That's the one thing it's very easy to get stuck in the studio all the time, and but you need inspiration from other sources and other places. So yeah, I do get to. I'm very, very lucky and privileged to be able to go to film music festivals and conferences and film festivals and mix with other filmmakers. I have a lot of filmmakers who are my friends, and that nourishes me. I like going to watch films and other art forms. Going to art galleries and exhibitions and the theatre, and not just film. Going to gigs, going to see friends and people that that inspire me musically. Always sort of listening to other musicians and discovering and finding other musicians to collaborate with as well.
So basically, your traveling is in service of your work too.
I always try and combine. I have extended holidays where I'll go somewhere for work, and then I'll extend it into a holiday so that I can travel around. I enjoy doing that as well. And I also have a dog part-time, so a border collie. So that's great because she comes to me a few times a week, and she's my neighbor's dog, and I've turned my garden into an agility training course. So when she's with me, I can't focus on anything else but her, and that's really fantastic because we're very in the present, in the now, and nothing's that's like a magic time, when I'm with her. But I like to cook and go out to restaurants and go out with friends. So yeah, it's just trying to find a balance there, and it's not all work, but also playtime as well.
Oh, it's great that you're enjoying your free time. Because I was in IMDb. I encourage people to go look at our IMDb page. It's crazy. I was like, wow, that's a lot of movies. Within a year, I was just scrolling down. Yeah, that was crazy. Cool. So let's talk about your favorites. Who are your top 3 favorite composers?
Oh, Hamid Reza, it's very difficult for me to say. I mean, it depends on. I mean, there's so many creative people that I admire. So many amazing musicians and composers and it depends on what I'm doing. I wake up today, my favorite composers are so and so. Tomorrow it'll be someone else. And I'm also always searching to be inspired and listening to fresh sounds to keep me engaged and keep me on my toes creatively as well. I mean, when I grew up, I was listening to Ennio Morricone, and I listened to Paco de Lucia, flamenco guitarist, and Zakir Hussain, who's an amazing world-class tabla player. They influenced me when I was growing up. I was really into flamenco, world music. Peter Gabriel, Kate Bush, as songwriters and in the pop world, they really influenced me and inspired me. But now, I mean, I listen to loads of people. I mean, everything, there's so much great work out there that it would be unfair of me to name them. But I mean, I love everyone from John Williams to Hans Zimmer. And a lot of my contemporaries in the industry are doing fantastic work. They're lovely people, and Volker Bertelmann, with All Quiet on the Western Front, to Hilda Gudnadottir is doing amazing work, and so many other people, all from the legendary composers. Michael Danner was someone who influenced me. Thomas Newman, I love the way he brings ambivalence into his music. That's been a big influence on me. So many.
Yeah, this is great. So this is it. Thank you so much. Your music is a true inspiration for me as a composer. Your personality is a beautiful inspiration for me as a human being, and your hard work and ambition gives power to and hope to all of us, especially young girls who are dreaming of becoming a successful woman like you. Thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting to you. Thank you very much.